Jones, look at that balance. Here comes the Cardinal blitz. Geno Smith, light spiral, intercepted by Tyler. We're back.
Well, it's Monday night, a new week has begun. I turn on
Saw that coming, and Daffy's coming over after getting that hand hit. And then Shaq Barrett plays, looking at that hand.
The biggest game each week is there.
The touchdown. We saw Philip Lindsay come off the field indicating an issue with his right hand. You can see right there.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? We're ready. Are you ready for some football? A Monday night party. Hey, this is rockin' random, Hank. Ready to get the good time started.
Welcome back to week 14 of Are You Ready for a Podcast, the official podcast of Person Football Fantasy Football League. I'm not your every week co-host, Joe, because I haven't been here I think I've been on one podcast in the last like 6 weeks, and that was as a guest. Parker hosted by himself like 3 weeks ago. We've missed a bunch of podcasts. We've been kind of busy, but I guess we'll recap the last like 3 weeks a little bit. Parker, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, that sounds good. I guess we'll just go team by team and kind of talk about what's been going on. In the last 3 weeks that we haven't. So I'll just go in alphabetical order for this. So Austin, when we last talked, he was sitting in a decent position at 5-5, looking to gear up for a playoff run, and he's lost 3 straight to Grant, Morgan, and Colin to officially eliminate him from playoff contention at 5-8. A disappointing finish to the season. Weeks 11 and 12 just didn't put up a lot of points and kind of slid down the standings. What do you think about Colin's team the last couple, or Austin's team the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, he just never had the running back depth. He had Kamara, who on the Saints offense has been kind of sputtering, and then Raheem has been kind of surpassed by Jeff Wilson in Miami, and he's never really found another option other than that. So that's kind of been the story of Austin's season. Has some good receivers. Really, Tua really came along for him, and then Dallas Goedert also got hurt. So tight end and running back really did him in this year. Yeah,
I agree. The Goddard injury was big for him, and then Kamara never really lived up to his draft day value, and then Raheem just kind of became irrelevant, and that sort of sunk his team, even with the Tyreek Tua stack. Next up is Ben. Last 3 weeks, he continued on his late push once again to make the playoffs, just like he did last year. And once again, just like last year, he's going to come up short with a loss to Grant this week, following wins over Thomas and Dan and snapping a 3-game winning streak. What do you think about Ben turning around his season and coming up just a little bit short, just like for the second year in a row? Yeah, I mean, I think he just put himself in too big of a hole, because I think both of us, we talked about it a little bit outside of the podcast. We both really like his team, and still really like his team. I like his chances to avoid the Haney and the Haney playoffs, but yeah, he's really come along. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins coming back from suspension was huge for him. Has been great. He's built up running back depth. He's got pretty good receiver depth. The trade with you actually turned out to be an even trade, because he obviously won the tight end part of it. And then you got Olave for it, so he got a good tight end for a good receiver. That's pretty even. And then he traded for Mahomes, who's been one of the like 3 best fantasy quarterbacks. So Ben's team really like rounded into form. I think he in-season managed actually well. He just dug himself too big of a hole. So I think he's got some things to look forward to next year if he does choose to stay in the league. And I do like his chances to avoid the Haney. Yeah, as we always say, there's no team more dangerous than Ben in November. But unfortunately, the calendar turned to December, and he got the first loss in a while. Yeah, November's for contenders. Unfortunately for Ben, he was like way too big of a pretender in September and October. Yeah. Next up's Colin. He's sitting right in the thick of the playoff hunt at 7-6. He the last 3 weeks got a loss to Hunter just like everybody else, but then has big close wins over me and Austin in the last couple of weeks to keep him in contention. Yeah, I mean, it was looking a little shaky for him. He's had some injury issues. Mark Andrews and what's his name? Marquise Brown was out for a while, but
now they look to be back. So I still really like his team. It's got a ton of upside. Just made a trade with you to get a little bit more running back depth because he was really Austin Eckler and David Montgomery, and that was it. And now he has Devin Singletary. So I think Colin's team is very solid. Among the non-Hunter teams, it's kind of, I mean, obviously we'll get to Hunter in a little bit, but it's kind of Hunter in a tier by his own. And after that, I think Colin's as good as anybody.
Yeah, I agree. Nice run by him. He had a little bit of a dry spell, didn't score over 100 points between week 8 and week 7 and week 11, actually. In that 4-game stretch, he averaged just about 83 points a game. But the last couple of weeks, when it's mattered most, he's turned it back on with 125, 118 points. Looks like his team's kind of pulling it back together here down the stretch. Next up is Dan. He's been a little bit up and down, but still in the thick of the playoff race, obviously at 7-6. Last 3 weeks, he beat you, then lost to Ben, and then beat Hunter. So, one of the only 2 teams to beat Hunter this season, and that kind of kept him in a good prime position at 7-6.
Yeah, Dan's team is just really coming strong. He's had great depth all year. He's picked up a couple key guys on the waiver wire. Isaiah Pacheco was a pretty big pickup, and yeah, so he has running back depth.
Actually, I traded him, Isaiah Pacheco.
I thought you dropped him. All right, never mind. Well,
I think for $10 waiver money.
Okay, well, so he essentially paid for him. Good move by him, and so he lost for a little bit, got Jamar back. Having Travis Kelce just helps so much. That's a huge positional advantage to any matchup he goes into. He's got the Burrow Jamar stack, which is, now that Jamar's back, will be a lethal combination for him if he's to make the playoffs, which it looks good right now. And so, yeah, Dan's team has just been very impressive. And again, I think you're kind of right there with Colin. Colin a little bit more upside, Dan a little bit more depth. But I did play Dan a couple weeks ago, and he had one off. So Dan does have a reasonable amount of upside.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's got a lot of upside, and getting Jamar back is huge for him coming into the playoffs. I think we may have lost our chance to eliminate him when he missed Jamar for a few weeks. Next up, we have Grant. Grant, kind of doing Grant things as always. He's coming in hot at the right time on a 4-game win streak into the playoffs, during which he's averaging 92 points, like he said in the group me. He's actually only averaging 86 points a game since week 6, but he keeps finding a way to get it done with wins over Austin, Zach, and Ben in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, this just makes me so mad. Like last year, Grant had a good team, and so I didn't even it was like he had great points against last year, but he had a good team. He had a great team, so I was less mad about it. His team is bad. He has the worst team outside of Thomas in the league. And he's a goddamn 2 seed. I mean, listen, I'm not one to talk about fantasy luck, but this is just completely ridiculous. He has one Leonard Fournette is a backup running back now. Nick Chubb is basically his only good player. I guess Garrett Wilson's pretty good with Mike White now, but his team is just not good, and he's the 2 seed, so he's going to be in the Final Four. He's going to be playing for money, which is ridiculous to me.
Yeah, since week 3, Grant has finished in the top half of the league in scoring once.
Yeah, I mean he will not. He won't have Lamar this week. We'll see about. But I mean the next 2 weeks for him are meaningless because he's locked in the 2 seed. So I guess he's got time to get Lamar back. So this it makes me mad.
Yeah, I agree. I mentioned this in the group me as well, but Grant right now has the single luckiest season of all time, and by some margin. He's plus 4.1 wins over expected this year, which is a huge number. I'm just glancing back, and it looks like you were plus 3.4 wins. Oh no, Dan in 2020 was plus 3.8 wins. That was the luckiest season of all time before this. Grant actually also last year had the 4th luckiest season of all time. So he's got number 1 and number 4 in terms of luckiest seasons of all time in the last 2 years in league history, which is a absolutely absurd stat. But we can keep going through. Next up is Hunter. More of the same for Hunter. He's been putting up huge numbers. Beat Colin, beat Nick, and then finally came down to earth and lost to Dan this week. But he's locked into the 1 seed, cruising into the playoffs, lead the league in scoring by a huge margin, and overall great season for Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really much that needs to be said. Hunter is the clear-cut favorite, the odds-on favorite. Maybe because I would say it's about as likely that he wins the league than he doesn't. He's just been dominant. He's strong at every position, especially running back, obviously. And yeah, there's just he's just been rolling. He's got a chance to make league history this week to first 12-win regular season. And so there's not much that needs to be said. He's clearly gearing up for the playoffs and trying to find that elusive championship that he has not been able to capture.
Yeah, absolutely. Next week, I'm going to calculate the Murray rankings, and I expect that Hunter will have certainly a top 5 season of all time, probably the number 1 regular season of all time. He's just putting up absurd scoring numbers. He probably won't break the scoring record. He needs like 165 points to break it. But he will almost certainly be the second highest scoring regular season of all time, and that's with points being down this year. Big regular season for Hunter. The funny thing is Derrick Henry really hasn't even been playing that well. So if he gets into playoff mode coming up here down the stretch, this is going to be a really, really scary team. Next up is you. Last 3 weeks, you put up 2 duds, but somehow got a win, and then finally got back on track this week with scoring, but got the loss. So you're 1-2, probably the record you deserved, with a loss to Dan, a win over Thomas, and a loss to Morgan.
Yeah, it's just been very up and down this year for me, and I've been able to find 4 guys like studs that I can really rely on, and really outside of that, it's been kind of a nightmare. Like I've just been plugging in guys in and out of the lineup and streaming quarterbacks all year, streaming tight ends all year. It's just been pretty ugly, and maybe we can make something happen this week against Colin and sneak into the playoffs again, which I'm one to do a lot of years, but I just haven't been consistent enough this year. I think I end season managed terribly. Or I just misused money and dropped guys I shouldn't have. So I'm not going to say I deserve to make the playoffs even if I do win and get left off on tiebreakers. It hasn't been a great year for me. But we'll see what happens, and we'll take it into either the playoffs or the Haney Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of, your team maybe was hitting its stride and peaking a little bit early, sort of in the middle of the season, and then the wheels have kind of fallen off a little bit here down the stretch. But you still got a shot to make it. You get the fortune of playing a 7-6 team, so a win puts you at least into the tiebreaker. So we'll see what happens from there. Next up, we got Morgan. His last 3 weeks have been all wins. He's actually also on a 4-game winning streak, just like Grant. And he's beaten Zach, Austin, and you the last 4 weeks. His team is really kind of rolling here at the end. Second half of the season, week 7 and on, he's averaging 113 points. And, if we just isolate the last 3 weeks, he's averaging 125 points. So Morgan's team really seems to be hitting its stride. Made a nice trade, I think, with sometime during the last 3 weeks with Nick. And looks like he's really gearing up for the playoffs. He's probably one of the top 3 or 4 teams here.
Yeah, I think Morgan would actually be my 2 seed now that I'm thinking about it, because I think the last time I was on the podcast was with Nick and Dan. I think that was 4 weeks ago. And I said Morgan kept letting me down because I kept talking about his team and he kept losing. Well, he's done nothing but win since then. God damn it. They made it 3. Anyway, so he's done nothing but win since then. He's looked really good. The trade with Nick was that was such a win for him to get AJ Brown back. He drafted AJ and then traded him to Nick in the big preseason trade, got him back. AJ Brown is such a stud, and to trade him for just Najee Harris is ridiculous. And so yeah, he's got great receivers, and his running backs have really come along as the season's gone on. He's got the number 1 quarterback in fantasy. So Morgan's team is looking really good for the playoffs. He's got to play Dan this week, so I guess he could get left out if he loses to Dan and some unlucky tiebreakers. But I do really like Morgan's team going forward.
And next up, we got another team who's fighting for its playoff life here, which is Nick. He's last 3 games, he lost to me, lost to Hunter, and then finally got a win over Zach. His offense has really been okay, 106, 113, 141 points. He's just been getting, a slight bit unlucky. But this week he made sure it didn't happen, led the league in scoring with 141 points. And, I do think he got the losing end of that deal with Morgan, but this is another team that really looks good coming into the playoffs. I would say this is another one that's right in the mix with everyone but Hunter. But we'll see if he can get some good fortune and make the playoffs this week.
Yeah, I think he's a slight step below some of the other teams we've talked about, but he's definitely a contender. I think he has more depth than me, but I would kind of put him on around my level of team. Devontae Adams it starts with him. He's really, really good. But other than that, I don't know. I'm fine with this team. I don't think he's undeserving of making the playoffs. Like I think if he made the playoffs, that's he's a perfectly fine team. But I don't know. I wouldn't fancy his chances against Morgan or against Hunter or anybody like that. So I think he's certainly better than Grant, but yeah. So I don't know. I'm okay with Nick's team. I don't love it, but I think he'd be a solid playoff team.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess you're right. Just looking at it a little bit further, Mike Evans hasn't been what we thought, and so his running backs. Christian Kirk has been really good, but isn't necessarily like a top end receiver. So really, it's just Devontae Adams and a bunch of wide receiver twos, and then his running backs have been good, but not great with Najee and Zeke. So I guess I agree with you there on your assessment. Next up is me. I've gotten 2 wins in the last 3 weeks over Nick and Thomas. Did lose to Colin in between those, but it looks like I've been a little bit lucky this season and kind of been fortunate enough to keep myself in good position at 7-6 to make the playoffs. I just giving my thoughts on my team. I don't think my ceiling is very high. I've got a lot of sort of mediocre contributing type of guys, but not a lot of stars. Christian Watson breaking out has been huge for me, but I don't know that my team is going to be long to the playoffs. If I do make it, I would say I'm probably even below the tier of you and Nick, but certainly have a good chance to get in based on the way the tiebreakers play out.
Yeah, you have done a good job sustaining the Cup injury. I think that kind of ruins your upside and going to the playoffs. But yeah, Christian Watson was a huge pickup. That was a great pickup. You're really just going to need Jonathan Taylor to really step up, put the team on his back, live up to the number 1 overall pick billing that and all the draft capital you spent on him. So we'll see if that happens. I'm not too keen on that, but yeah, I think you'll be one of the worst playoff teams if you do make it. But I think you did do a pretty good job on the waiver wire managing your team this year to sustain an injury to the best player in fantasy.
Yeah, if there's one thing that I know about the Colts, it's that the Jeff Saturday Colts is that they enjoy establishing it. So Jonathan Taylor, he may not be playing as well as he was last year, but if you're going to give him the ball 25 times, I think he's going to be just fine as a running back 1 in the playoffs. But I agree with you. I kind of need him to be more than just a running back 1. He probably needs to be the running back 1 for me to really have a chance in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Next up is Thomas. His last 3 weeks have been 3 losses. He has scored he's averaging over the last 4 weeks, he's averaging 68 points per game. So it's been a rough finish to the season for Thomas.
Yeah, we're gonna look back, and Thomas beating Hunter this year is maybe like the all-time upset that's ever happened in the history of the league.
Absolutely outrageous.
It
wasn't even early in the year. It was week 9.
Yeah, he had just picked up Justin Fields, and Justin Fields went off for him. No, he didn't. He benched Justin Fields.
Yeah, he benched Justin Fields.
He picked him up, but he benched him. Justin Fields had like 40 points on his bench, and he still beat Hunter because that was the Joe Mixon week because Joe Mixon had like 54. So it took basically like the greatest performance in the last like decade of fantasy football for that to happen. But yeah, one of the all-time anomalies. Yeah, just a nightmare season for Thomas. And I do feel bad that he's sustained so many injuries. Like he's renamed his team the Morgue, and that's pretty accurate assessment. But like he's also just done like a terrible job. He's just had in terms of like the waiver wire, like he's just had Robbie Anderson and Greg Dortch and Josh Reynolds on his team the entire year. Like there are just so many better waiver options available every single week for free that you can get, and he just given up on the season and decided not to pursue any of those options. So I don't really understand it. I guess he really wants to drive the trophy somewhere. Yeah, I don't think there's.
I agree with that assessment. Very unlucky, obviously, with the injuries to Breece Hall and to Javonte Williams. Sort of and even DeAndre Swift, once you have those things happen, your season's kind of toast. And now more recently, Joe Mixon. But he hasn't done much to right the ship. The win over Hunter is very funny. So I think he's got that to take away from the year. And then in a couple of weeks he'll have a shot to not finish last. So that's the challenge in front of him. Next up we got Zach. His last 3 weeks, he's kind of ran out of gas here down the stretch, with losses to Morgan, Grant, and Nick to put him at 5-8 and officially out of the playoff hunt after starting the season 3-0. He went 2-8 from that point on. Initially got some bad luck sort of in the middle of the season, and then just couldn't pull it off at the end of the year to salvage some momentum. And his team kind of still, he's had those top three with Diggs, Dalvin, and Barkley have been really good, but aside from that, he really hasn't found anything.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make. He just was never able to find depth and startable pieces around those guys. He's had both Steelers receivers that obviously hasn't really worked out too well. Had Mooney, he picked up Mooney. Mooney played for pretty well after he picked him up after I dropped him. And then he got hurt, and he just hasn't been able to find anything. Had Romeo Dobbs, he got hurt. So yeah, just like you said, nothing outside of those three guys. And Njoku got hurt for a little bit for him. And then he did bring a cancer into his locker room last week with a statutory sexual deviant. So that probably didn't help his chances last week. So I hard for me to feel too bad for Zach after that.
Yeah, highly questionable management decision there by him, but I guess you get desperate, and you do some things. So it is what it is. I agree. I think you can certainly look at that and sort of raise the eyebrows a little bit. But Zach will be trying to fight for seeding here, hopefully avoiding a bye in the Haney Cup playoffs. So just looking at that overall, kind of where we stand, and I know you want to get off and watch the Pels here anytime soon. But right now, Hunter has the number 1 seed locked up at 11-1. Grant has the number 2 seed locked up at 9-4. And then there's kind of a log jam. So Colin, Dan, Morgan, and myself at 7-6 are sitting pretty for playoff spots. And then you and Nick are right behind with a shot at the playoffs as well at 6-7. The next three are out of contention and trying to avoid a Haney Cup bye, which is Austin, Zach, and Ben. And then Thomas holding up the rear at 3-10. He will be the last seed in the Haney Cup. So I'll have a more thorough preview of all the tiebreakers and everything going into the playoffs. But Joe, who do you think, right now, records considering, so the teams that could be in, who's the most 6 deserving teams of making the playoffs?
So the 6 best teams. So Hunter, well, Grant's in. So I have to say
Grant's in. So you just gotta have Grant.
Hunter, Grant, Morgan, Colin, Dan, and then so it would be between me, you, and Nick then.
Yeah.
That's kind of close. Probably Nick.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
It's close between all the three of us, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think probably Nick. But it's close. I mean, we're splitting hairs there, but I think that the top.
And then I'd probably say me over you if I just said 6 best teams, because I also don't think Grant's in the top 6, but he's obviously making the playoffs.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. Grant getting the first round bye is huge for his chances. Would you take Hunter or the field right now?
I'd probably take the field.
I
know Hunter's that.
He's got 2 games.
Well, so does Grant. But I don't know. I'll just take if you're gonna give me 5 teams instead of 1, I don't know. I mean, do you think it? So you think it's so you
I'm
think
really giving you 3 teams instead of 1 because Hunter's already in the second round.
True. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, I'd like to see who the second round teams are. Yeah, one of them is Grant. So really, it's 2 versus 1. And the Hunter's gonna find a way to choke, I think.
So you agree with Hunter being a fraud? Okay. I like that.
No, this is just the ultimate litmus test. But
fair enough. All right, let's briefly talk about week 14 here, and we'll kind of make our picks. Although the season pick'em is kind of gone by the wayside at this point, with us not recording a podcast for half the year. But I'm just gonna go in the order they appear on my screen. So we got first matchup. We got me versus Zach. Right now, Zach is projected to win by 40.
Yeah, you seem like intent on. Well, who have you not put into your lineup?
Literally, I have no choice but to,
Cortland Sutton. And all right, anyway, you seem intent on throwing away this week.
well, I just think that there's nothing I could do. There, I reset my lineup. Now I'm projected 73.
Okay, so 33, whatever. Yeah, I guess Zach, because you're like throwing away this week and then just hoping that one of the like 4 things that you need to happen happens. So I guess Zach and for that. You
Yeah,
did get you're like best 3 players run by, so that kind of hurts.
yeah, I'm picking Zach as well. I mean, I think, 4 of my top 5 players are on bye this game. So
I cannot believe he's starting Deshaun Watson though.
yeah, that's insane. But I'm not sure that there's really anything I could do. I had considered and sort of tossed around the idea of making trades, trading Jonathan Taylor, AJ Dillon, trying to kind of stock up for this week, trading some guys that are on bye at sort of discounts. But the fact of the matter is, if I'm going to do anything in the playoffs, I need those guys, and I can't really sell them for 50 cents on the dollar. So I don't think I really have much of a choice here, because even if I did go make a bunch of moves, I don't think I'd be able to get my lineup to a point where I'd be, competitive in this game.
Yeah, what would you have done if Taysom had like scored another touchdown on Monday and you like needed the win this week?
Then I would have done that. I would have had to trade those guys. But fortunately, I'm not in that situation. So I'm just going to have to take the L on this one, I think.
Yeah.
Do you disagree? Would you be doing something different?
No, probably not. I don't know. I mean, because the only people you can look to trade with are like Hunter, Grant, and like Thomas, whose like places are solidified. I guess Austin and Ben too, but I don't know. And Zach.
Yeah. It's just a very tough position to be in. Yeah. We got Austin next up against Hunter. Hunter projected 11-point favorite. Austin, predicted 96. His team's kind of been in a slump.
Yeah, I think Hunter. Hunter is without Aaron Jones. I think Hunter's gonna win though. I think he'll take the and Austin's like Kamara and Terry. So okay, never mind. Huge bye week advantage to Hunter. So I'll take Hunter to set the regular season wins record.
Yeah, I agree. I'm taking Hunter here. Josh Jacobs is questionable, which apparently means he's going to rush for 200 yards. So I'll take Hunter. Next up, we got Morgan and Dan. Dan projected a 6-point winner here. This is going to be a close game. These are 2 of the highest predicted totals of the week. This might actually be the 2 highest predicted totals of the week. So this should be a high scoring affair. Who do you have here between Dan and Morgan fighting for their playoff lives?
So Morgan will be without Paris Campbell, not a big deal. Dan without Chase Claypool, not a big deal. There you go, Trey. All right, big 3. I need Dan to win this game because I would much rather Morgan be at 7-7 than Dan, because I'm 0-1 against Morgan and 0-2 against Dan. So because things aren't going my way this year, I'm gonna pick Morgan because then Dan will be 7-7 and I'll probably get eliminated.
I'm gonna pick Dan here. I lied. I'm gonna pick Morgan here. If Morgan wins this, that opens up the only scenario where I miss the playoffs. And it seems like bad things happen to me in fantasy. So I'm gonna take Morgan in the upset. Next up, we have Grant and Thomas. Thomas projected 52 points this week. He's got not set his lineup yet. He's got Justin Fields and Taysom on bye. Grant projected 87 and probably still going to roll to a win.
Yeah, he'll probably. No, I'm going to pick Thomas here. I think he hasn't put in Mixon or Derek Carr yet. That's got to be like 30, 35 points right there.
Yeah.
Which would put him even. So because Grant's a fraud and is, in the playoffs no matter what, this is going to be like the one week he loses to like maybe. Well, it's not even going to lower his luck rating because he's going to be playing against a shitty team. So, but yeah, I'm going to take Thomas to actually win since both of their places are solidified.
I actually like that take. Grant, when it doesn't matter, doesn't need to show up. Maybe this will be the week that he gets a little unfortunate. So I agree. Yeah, I'll take Grant.
Yeah.
I'll take Thomas. Next up, we got another important matchup for playoff positioning, which is Nick against Ben. Nick projected the winner 106 to 101 right here. Ben just trying to avoid a playoff bye. Nick is scrapping and clawing for his life. I got Ben here. If Nick wins, I'm in. And that does not seem like the way things are trending. So I'll take Ben.
If Nick wins, you're in? You mean if Nick loses?
Yeah. No, if Nick wins, I'm in.
Well, why would that matter?
Because I beat Nick twice. So for the playoff scenarios, there's no playoff scenario whereby Nick loses and I miss the playoffs. Where Nick wins and I miss the playoffs.
All right. Well, I'm also going to take Ben. I think his team's just better. And Nick is not starting Mike Evans right now, which is interesting, I guess. But yeah, I'm gonna also take Ben. I think his team, outside of last week, peaking at the right time.
All right, and then last up we have your matchup. You're projected to lose by 6 to Colin. Colin seemed like has been turning it on recently. And he just made that trade to acquire Singletary to kind of solidify his lineup against you this week. What's your thoughts on this one?
I'll pick myself to win. What the hell? It's week 14. It's a must win, and then I would need help. So I don't think I'm going to make the playoffs, but somebody's got to believe in my guys. So I need confidence instilled in them going into the last week of the season. So we got to shock the world here, guys. 6-point underdogs. Nobody thinks we can do it.
I like it. You and making the playoffs and a tiebreaker go hand in hand. And that can't happen unless you win this week. So I got you. Real quick before we close, I have a little sneak preview of what I've been working on here. This is the tiebreakers for this week. It's somewhat complicated. There are 16 scenarios, and this is of course just for the Haney Cup playoff. For the DJ playoffs. So these are your matchups right here. These are the possible teams that could win. These are everyone's records against each other. So I'm going to be kind of sorting through this, figuring out what will happen in every tiebreaker scenario, and have that ready for you guys to look at probably later this week, certainly before the games kick off. So I got that to look forward to. But that's about all I have for today. Joe, anything else you wanted to touch on before we close?
No, there's like 45 seconds left in this Pelicans game, so I want to watch the end of it.
Should we watch your reaction in real time?
Sure, if you want.
Well, 45 seconds takes about 10 minutes, so I'll be
it's 54 seconds, and I was gonna say it's a close game, and there's gonna be like a million fouls, so we probably don't want to do that.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is the last podcast of the regular season. We will hopefully be back next week with playoff preview.
Yeah, we'll try to get them out during the playoffs, and we'll try to actually have a season recap this year, unlike last year. So,
all right.
Like, comment, and subscribe.
This telecast is copyrighted by the NFL for the private use of our audience. Any other use of this telecast or of any pictures, descriptions, or accounts of the game without the NFL's consent is prohibited.